The Uniting for Ukraine program has been open since April 2022. But now that a significant amount of people have been processed through the program, we know more about how the program actually works. This is immigration attorney Amanda Thomas. In today's video, I am going to go over some frequently asked questions, give some updates, and address some rumors when it comes to the Uniting for Ukraine program. So keep watching. The war in Ukraine has displaced millions of people, both internally within Ukraine and into the neighboring countries. Fleeing Ukrainians with family members in the United States didn't have very many options at the beginning of the invasion. A lot of those Ukrainians went to the United States southern border to seek humanitarian parole. The situation at the southern border has been precarious for many years. Seeking to both provide comfort to those affected by the invasion and to prevent the problem at the southern border from getting worse, President Biden created the Uniting for Ukraine program to allow for speedy processing of humanitarian parole applications for Ukrainian refugees. As the program has unfolded, we have learned more about how it works. First, I'm going to talk about some practical, frequently asked questions about how the application process works. Then I am going to go over how the qualifications are being applied. And third, I am going to address some rumors about the program. So first, to address the practical topics. How long does it take to get approved for travel under Uniting for Ukraine? This program is indeed much faster than the normal application process for applying for humanitarian parole while abroad. After the sponsor submits their affidavit of support, it is taking about a week to get an approval. After the initial approval of the sponsor is received, then the beneficiary submits their attestations, and it is taking about a week to get travel authorization after submission of the attestations. So all in all, it could take as little as 2 weeks to get this process accomplished. Do you need to fill out an I-131? Usually, to apply for humanitarian parole while abroad, you both need to file an I-134 and an I-131. It does not appear that Uniting for Ukraine applicants need to draft or file an I-131. Only the I-134 needs filled out, and that can be filled out online for Uniting for Ukraine applicants only. Do you need to fill out separate I-134s for each beneficiary you're sponsoring, including children? Yes, you need to fill out separate I-134s for each beneficiary you are sponsoring, including children. Each person that's going to be traveling to the United States needs their own travel authorization, including children. Children are not covered under their parents' travel authorization. Therefore, you need to fill out a separate I-134 for each person, even children. Can you use a joint sponsor for the I-134? The I-134 recently changed, and a lot of people speculate that that's because they made a special I-134 for the Uniting for Ukraine program. Previously, the I-134 version would not allow people to combine their income with others for purposes of sponsoring someone. You had to find one sponsor that made enough money to sponsor the beneficiary. But in the new I-134 form, it appears that you can combine your income with other people's in order to meet the income threshold. Also, the I-134 income threshold is not a hard and fast rule, especially when it comes to Uniting for Ukraine. If the sponsor does not meet the minimum income listed in the poverty guidelines, but they're getting close, you can still apply. The person reviewing the affidavit of support does have the discretion to approve it, even if someone is slightly below the threshold. So now on to talking about clarifications about the qualifications. It is looking like the Department of Homeland Security is being very liberal on how they are applying the rules of this program. They want to include as many people as possible. However, you should be aware that receiving travel authorization under Uniting for Ukraine is not the same as being approved for humanitarian parole. You can only be approved for humanitarian parole once you've applied at the border and a CPB officer has granted it to you. So while the Department of Homeland Security is being very liberal on how many people they're allowing into the United States under Uniting for Ukraine, the risk that you run is that you make all of your plans to travel to the United States and you could still be denied entry at the border. As was stated in my previous video, there are qualifications that a person must meet in order to be included in the Uniting for Ukraine program. The first qualification is that they must have resided in Ukraine in the time leading up to the invasion around February 11th. They must be a citizen of Ukraine with a valid Ukrainian passport, or they must be the immediate relative of a citizen of Ukraine. They must have an approved sponsor, and they must clear biographic and biometric safety clearances. So I'm going to go over a little bit about how these qualifications are actually being applied in the program. As to the first qualification, residing in Ukraine up until February 11th, 2022. DHS has stated that this requirement is intended to be interpreted broadly to encompass all that may otherwise qualify. The second qualification is that one must be displaced. But what does that actually mean? And does it include people that are still in Ukraine? A displaced person, as defined by the UN, is someone who has been forced or obliged to flee or to leave their homes or places of habitual residence, in particular as a result of or in order to avoid the effects of armed conflict, situations of generalized violence, violation of human rights, or natural or human-made disasters. There is nothing in this definition or in the definition of displaced within the wording of the rules for Uniting for Ukraine that prevents someone who is internally displaced within Ukraine from applying for the program. DHS has also stated that this qualification is meant to be interpreted broadly. So if you are displaced because of this conflict, but you are not outside of Ukraine, you still qualify for Uniting for Ukraine. Another qualification is that you must be a Ukrainian citizen or an immediate relative of a Ukrainian citizen. I have had several people tell me that even though they otherwise qualified for Uniting for Ukraine, they have been denied because they are not legally citizens of Ukraine. This includes people that had an approved sponsor and were living in Ukraine up until the invasion. So it does appear that Ukrainian citizenship is one of the qualifications that they are strictly enforcing. To those who are not legal citizens of Ukraine but have still been affected by this situation, just because you're not eligible under Uniting for Ukraine doesn't mean that you may not be eligible for humanitarian parole through the traditional humanitarian parole application process. The next thing that I would like to clarify as to the qualifications for the program is who qualifies as an immediate relative. The rules state that an immediate relative is either the spouse of a Ukrainian citizen or the child of a Ukrainian citizen. particularly the child of a Ukrainian citizen that is unmarried and under the age of 21. This would mean, for instance, a family where the parents are not legal citizens of Ukraine, but the children are, would not qualify. However, again, this program is being applied very liberally. If you find yourself in a situation like this, the worst thing that can happen is that you apply and get denied. You could get denied during the initial approval process, but also the risk you're taking is that you could get travel authorization but be denied entry at the border. But if that's a risk you're willing to take, you may still be able to see if they will let you in, even if your Ukrainian citizen relative is not listed as an immediate relative under the rules for the program. It's all a matter of how much risk you are willing to take. So the last thing that I would like to do is address some rumors that I've heard about the program. The first rumor that I would like to address is that those who are receiving humanitarian aid in a third country are not qualifying. When the program first became available to people, there was a rumor that a family that had received humanitarian aid in Germany were denied based on that aid. That the United States was saying that they didn't need humanitarian parole into the United States because they were already receiving help in Germany. However, this appears that it's probably just a rumor. If you have a beneficiary in a third country who is receiving humanitarian aid, you should still apply for Uniting for Ukraine because it's likely that they still qualify. Another rumor that I've heard about the Uniting for Ukraine program is that there is a 100,000 applicant limit. This is simply not true. I believe that this rumor stems from a press release that President Biden did at the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. President Biden made a press statement that he was committed to accepting 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. And that is true. President Biden did commit to accepting 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. However, those are Ukrainian refugees with a refugee designation through the United Nations. That is a separate program than Uniting for Ukraine. There is no 100,000 person limit on Uniting for Ukraine, so you don't have to worry about whether or not there's going to be enough room for you in the program. There isn't a limit. The last rumor that I would like to address is that there has been a rumor that eventually there will be a special green card and citizenship program for those who entered under Uniting for Ukraine. I have heard this rumor from a few people now, and I really hope that it's true. But as of right now, there hasn't been any official announcement, there hasn't been any law passed, and there hasn't been any executive order or anything that could grant anyone permanent residence or citizenship through Uniting for Ukraine. That means that until a law is officially passed, those who entered under Uniting for Ukraine that would like to seek permanent residence must find a separate legitimate ground to do so. Whether that's applying for asylum or whether that is applying under a family-based type of visa, you should not wait to take whatever action that you're going to in hopes that this program may come to be true. And remember that applications for asylum must be made within 1 year of entry. So I hope this video cleared some things up. If you found this video informative, if you found this video helpful, I hope that you would like this video and subscribe.